CRM was supposed to improve customer relationships. Instead, it's shorthand for Customer Rage Machine. Your CRM can't explain why a customer's package took 5 detours? Reboot your inner peace and scream into a pillow. It's okay. On the ServiceNow AI platform, CRM stands for something better. AI agents don't just track issues, they resolve them, transforming the entire customer experience. So breathe in and breathe out. Bad CRM was then. This is ServiceNow.
You walk in tired and hungry, one bad dinner away from losing it. You don't like to cook. You don't want more takeout. You just want something good. That's why there's Dish by Blue Apron. Pre-made meals with at least 20 grams of protein and no artificial flavors or colors. From fridge to fork in 5 minutes or less. Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How Are the podcast, and we are on the final countdown to our return to the Premier League, where our last opening day fixture in the top flight was 8 years ago. A lot happened in that time, as you know, so anticipation is high for our fixture against West Ham United at the Stadium of Light. So to find out about the Hammers, we have something a little bit special. We have someone who personally I grew up with on The Big Breakfast. Which I actually doubt the youth of today would believe was an early morning breakfast show if they saw clips today, if I'm completely honest. But currently he presents Extra Time on TalkSPORT, and to top it all off, he is also a huge West Ham fan. So we are very pleased to welcome Paul Ross. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Chris. How you doing, matey?
I'm good.
Bad luck.
Yeah, we're a bit, we were just saying we're a bit hot, aren't we? It's a bit sticky in it to do something like this.
I think it might be cooler for the weekend. And of course, we're travelling to you on Saturday. So interesting times ahead. I mean, I've got big memories of Sunderland because I'm probably the oldest man you've had on the podcast. And I remember really clearly when you beat Leeds 1-0 back in 73 when Bob Stokoe was your manager. Which was everyone's favourite kind of underdog FA Cup victory until West Ham beat Arsenal. We were second tier then in 1980.
Yeah, still the last ones, aren't you? From the second division?
Yeah, because Portsmouth won it, but they were top tier then very briefly. Yeah. They've gone back down again now, yeah.
And Wigan got relegated when they won it.
Well, I remember it really clearly because it was Trevor Brooking was playing and Brian Clough had done a piece for the Daily Express. And the back page of the Express on the morning of the FA Cup final said, Trevor Brooking, he floats like a butterfly and that one too. Winning goal for us, and I think it bounced in off his bum.
Well, I remember actually, it's funny enough, Brian Clough in that 73 one.
Yeah.
Clough in that 73 one said Leeds would win it and we didn't stand a chance.
Yeah. So he's two for two then, isn't he, with our teams?
Yeah, that's it. So how's things at TalkSPORT Towers?
I know they're good fun. I mean, we've had a lot of technical, boring upheavals, which I don't go on too much about it because I'm on the overnight show, so people are less interested in what we're going through because we're all living our lives. But we're in new studios and we've got brand new cameras. Must have cost a fortune. But for about 3 months, we were downstairs in this little bunker of a studio, which is a bit depressing. We're back up on the big boys studio now. But luckily for the listeners and viewers, I'm not in vision overnight. I look a bit like Dracula's fat-faced older brother.
Well, you're speaking of those cameras. I think the clips have gone viral of Jason Cundy and his latest tirade against Spurs and their capitulation in the Super Cup final.
Everybody sing Spurs, Chaz and Dave. Great for that, Jason. Lovely fella, Jason.
I mean, he must, because they look like a lot of effort. He puts a lot into them, doesn't he?
Well, I'm amazed his voice holds up for the show because he goes bright purple. He does it, and the veins stand out in his neck. And that's why he keeps him fit. But it was a joy, that, because, of course, it was Jamie O'Hara's been off on holiday for a while.
Yeah.
Jason doing the show with his presenters. And as we know, Spurs were leading until the 85th minute. And they led until, the 94th minute. And then, of course, lost on penalties. It couldn't be. If only there was an adverb to describe like Spursy. It was, great fun and long season ahead of us, as we know. And blimey, is it going to be a great season, I think. And it is, without being patronising, I think it's great that Sunderland are back in the top tier where you belong because And it's not just about the documentary series and all that kind of stuff. It just didn't feel right that you were out of it for so long. 8 years now?
Yeah, 8 long years, and we'll get into David Moyes a little bit in a minute. But just in terms of you at TalkSport, well, I was looking at 8 or 9 years now. I mean, after everything you've done, because you've done so much, it must be great just to talk about football.
Well, it is, although I joined the company back before it was in its new home. We're part of News Corporation now, and that was on Talk Radio. Well, we did all sorts, and I still, because it's overnight, Talk TV, Talk Radio shuts down. So I'm across 2 stations, which is actually, I mean, I'm a football fan, not a fanatic. I've never played the game. They used to stick me in goal because I was so short-sighted as a kid, but I wouldn't wear glasses, stupidly. And so we do all kinds of other items as well. So, for example, this week we've been doing stuff on the countdown to Victory over Japan Day. We do lots of history stuff. We do a couple of books, sometimes football books, sometimes non-fiction. Like we've got one coming up on ancient Rome, for example. So mainly football, bit of boxing. For Wimbledon, we'll do things like tennis as the station. Well, I mean, football's our bread and butter on the spine of the show, but we do other items as well.
Yeah.
So TV previews. So we do all the basic stuff, but with a football base, a football bedrock.
Yeah. So I mean, you go back with some of that TalkSport royalty. I mean, were you just after those kind of crazy years, or was it when you first joined?
I was working on what used to be called Talk Radio when a guy called Kelvin McKenzie took over. Yeah. He bought the company, and he was known in the 80s for editing the Sun newspaper, but it was a big sportsy head. I never really and he turned it into TalkSport. And I was there for a year when it was TalkSport, Talk Radio becoming TalkSport. So that was very much kind of by the seat of your pants there. No comment rights or anything. They used to do a thing where they had 2 Australian guys would come over and they could talk about the match but not do commentary. And then they could say about a goal. So it's all very much like the Wild West in the early days. I mean, it's settled down properly now. And I think it's about 250, exclusive commentary games this season. Yeah. I think we've got people, we cover games all over the world. We do sports all over. Boxing's a big thing for us now as well, of course. But in the beginning, it really was just, a microphone and a bloke or two and the old woman talking about football. Yeah. And out of that, as they say, Mighty Oaks or, TalkSport grew for that little tiny acorn, basically. I think the huge difference was when Alan Brazil came on board, because he's such a lovely fella, great company, and not frightened to speak his mind. So he never sounded like he was inventing an opinion just for the sake of it. He didn't say stuff to get the phones going. In fact, I worked first with Adrian Durham when we were Talk Radio. I must have known him now something like, I remember when his hair was still ginger. Must have known him 30. Like Chris Evans, Snow White now. He's gone Snow White.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a completely different beast now, because I've read a brilliant book about the first 10 years, I think it was, and they had commentators sitting in a hotel room watching the game on the TV.
Yeah, and as I said, and they couldn't do proper commentary for some games, so they had to cover them, but they had to say, just talk around it, if that makes sense. But, things kind of settled down. And also there was nothing, I think it's always surprised people in the business even, how much of an appetite there is for sport on the radio. I mean, he almost used to be a spoof, darts on the radio. We've got a darts channel on YouTube now. We've got, boxing, we do cricket, stuff like that. And there's something about radio allowing you to paint your own pictures for a commentary game, I think. And, of course, it's completely intrusive, invasive. The station's mainly in vision now, but, you can wander around the house with it. You can be doing anything else. You can be working on your computer, but be listening to it at the same time with a tiny image in the corner. So it's kind of, almost like a sports virus, if you like. There's no escaping it.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with listening to 5 Live before Sky Sports, and you're absolutely right. Listening to the game on the radio, it just gives you a completely different picture of that game. You're picturing it, aren't you, rather than seeing it for yourself?
Absolutely. In fact, my best mate and probably my oldest friend as an adult from school, not from school days, is Danny Baker, who used to do the 606 Live, and him and Danny Kelly kind of helped create. It was like an early version, on the BBC, but on 5, and they were very much laws unto themselves until the management started messing around with them and Danny left, but Danny, kind of moved on. But that was very much like the blueprint, a matrix of what TalkSport hopes to be, because Danny Kelly's still with us, of course, does a Transeurope Express. He's always on with H&J. So, it's just, I met Danny first of all doing a London kind of jokey current affairs show. I was a producer, then a researcher, then producer. And Danny's just a Millwall fanatic. And it's kind of ironic that as a West Ham fan, my best mate's a Millwall fan. We should be at daggers drawn, but that's football.
Yeah. Well, actually, bringing Danny Baker up, it just reminds me of the old own goals and gaffes and all that. Absolutely brilliant. Had them all. But actually,
he had a great show that went out on Sundays called, I think it was called The Game. And basically they followed, there's a place in London called Hackney Marshes where there are loads, it's not marked, it's like a big recreation area, loads of football pitches. And there's something called the Clement Attlee Trophy, because Clement Attlee, the first Labour Prime Minister after the Second World War, was an East London MP and a football fan. The trophy's still played for. And they went along and filmed it, just like on one camera. And Danny did amazingly funny commentary to it. And it was, again, it's that kind of thing that TalkSPORT can do that. We can take, we do lots of non-league football. We can take small stuff. And then with the people listening's help, I mean, like anything, I mean, you know the deal, Chris, but, if we say, have you ever been to a game and come out and the car's been nicked, or whoever random it is, somebody's got a story along those lines, whatever it is,
Yeah, we've got fans writing them in left, right, and centre for stories on away days and stuff like that. But just quickly, actually, on Millwall, they've threatened to come up the last couple of seasons. I'm assuming you're happy that they've stayed where they are.
Well, again, I think it'd be fascinating. I mean, I've not been to the New Den now for a few seasons. I used to go to Cold Blow Lane quite a bit, and it used to feel a bit like trudging towards the Somme in the August of 1916, because I'm around my big footballs, going to matches era was the 70s. And then I went away to uni late 70s and got my job in telly early 80s, and then life takes over a bit. But it was quite a terrifying. Them in Chelsea were the worst ones to go to. Yeah. But actually, they feel like, it'd be great if they did it, because they will have earned their place. And that's what's great about football and the playoffs and the pyramid, isn't it? And, I mean, you guys, must have felt cut adrift down there in what would be the third tier for a little while, but you've earned your place back there. They must feel they've paid their dues and then some in Millwall, Yeah. Although I would people the famous song, "We are Millwall, no one likes us, we don't care." It sums up their attitude. That's it. And here we've got the whole north-south of the river thing. I mean, West Ham's very much, the academy is very much like East London, but north of the river. They're South London, but they've both had huge numbers of Dockers as supporters. Yeah. And we came out of the old ironworks and then became West Ham in, I think, 1904. But it was that thing, like most of football, it was very much, it's out of working class, but mainly working environments, when guys would work 5.5 days a week, and football was their treat, if you like, their escape, and a way for, particularly, there used to be fathers and sons more, and now it's whole families, but it was a way for families to bond and feel they were part of something much bigger, some big community thing, which is what still makes football so magic, I think.
Yeah, I forgot all about that. Was it Thames Ironworks that started?
Yeah, good memory. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But well, let's get it.
Comes unhappy hammers.
Well, let's get into West Ham and your love of West Ham, Paul. Because I was trying to look, and I'm trying to guess. And apologies if this is wrong, but I'm assuming it began around the time when West Ham won the World Cup.
I was 10 when that happened, because I'm 70 in a couple of years' time. I know I don't look it, but they said there's no wrinkles on a balloon. But yeah, I remember that really clearly. And I've got vague memories, but they may be like those false memories of us winning the FA Cup in 64. But I was still at primary school then. I was just about to go to secondary school when we, that magical summer, 66, and it was West Germany, and football was kind of alive then. But again, going back to a different era, I started going out, kind of going to pubs and clubs when I was probably 15, 16, as everybody sort of does. And Bobby Moore used to have a pub on Stratford Broadway, Stratford East London, and he called it Moro's, like done in that horrible white Artex, so it looked like something from North Africa, Morocco. And he would be in there every home game. He'd be in there standing at the bar 6 o'clock with a few beers on. And he used to say, Bobby, win or lose on the booze. So that's another, it shows you how much it was part of everybody's life in those days. I think the World Cup I remember really clearly is the Mexico one, with all that fuss and nonsense about Bobby Moore nicking a bracelet and, the kind of sabotage, and the fact it was the last Sir Alf Ramsey World Cup. And we were, unfortunately, the team didn't gel as well as we had done in 66. Peter Bonetti made some mistakes. The Chelsea keeper, known as the Cat, was in goal, didn't do fantastically for us at times. But in that sense, I think I've always regarded West Ham as a cup club. And when you think my era, I know we won the cup in 64. Absolutely. 75, fantastic. Yeah. We again in 1980. And I'm thinking, great, every 4 or 5 years, we're going to win the FA Cup, the League Cup. Then we won nothing. I mean, we won the Inter-Toto Cup, I think, in 99, the Inter-2 Bob Cup in 99. And then we were beaten by Liverpool in, 2006. And then nothing, as you've got the Europa Conference a couple of seasons ago. So, but that's the way football goes. But the weird thing for me was, and I felt cheated by London's builders, we were the team that played in the very first Wembley FA Cup. We got beaten by Bolton in 1923, the famous White Horse Cup final. I think it's like 140,000 people. There's no health and safety back in those days. And we were meant to be the team that made it to the new Wembley. But the builders were late, so we went down to Cardiff to do it. But that would have been what we were robbed of, was saying we were beaten in the first Wembley and we were beaten in the new Wembley. That's very West Ham, that would have been,
Well, the 2006, that was the Pardew dance on, wasn't it?
Right, yeah. We get beaten by Liverpool. So,
yeah.
I mean, great managers down the years. I remember back in the 70s when we got relegated. I think it might have been 76, 77. And John Lyle was our manager then. And I think we stayed around when we knew we were going down. I remember staying for about an hour, it felt, after the game, and still singing, Lyle is our leader. And the club didn't sack him. That would be unheard of these days, wouldn't it? Somebody who gets you relegated, we'll get us back up. We'll give you another go, I mean, it's the job for life, being a football manager.
Yeah, I think he was at Ipswich for a good while, wasn't he, as well, John Lyle? But talking about Bobby Moore, actually, you broke a memory because I think it was 93 when Bobby Moore sadly passed away.
Yeah.
And I think the first game West Ham had was at Roker Park. Because of how Sunderland dealt with it that day, I think for a good few years there was a bit of a good relationship between the two sides after that. I remember that.
I do think, without being too cryptic, I do think that, you've always felt to me like a proper side. You've never been, in the way that West Ham have never been. I know football's changed, it's all more corporate and stuff, but it's always felt like a club that's a ground-up club, a bit like West Ham. I mean, we're many things at West Ham, but we're not really glamorous. There's a lot of competition in London, and while I hate to mention the of which we've always the underdogs, but we're never going to. I think we both probably regard ourselves as cup sides. I know back in that nobody thought Leicester would ever get the Premier League title, but I can't see that happening again in my lifetime. Something as wild as that. I mean, what are they, 5,000-1 at the start of the season?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
I remember being I'd have been 15 or 16, and there used to be a fun fair. It's still there every year, but quite near the West Ham ground, between the West Ham ground and where I grew up, which is a place called Leytonstone, over near Leighton Orient. Every bank holiday, every August, every Easter, there'd be a massive fun fair. And I remember being over there, it would have been about 72, maybe, 71. So Bobby Moore was still at the club. And he was there with at least one of his daughters. And he's the first person I'd ever seen who had like a proper suntan. Because we didn't go away. People didn't go to Spain or anything. So, the 3 or 4 days when the sun was shining, we'd all be out there trying to get a tan. But we looked like tapioca pudding. Possibly glamorous bloke with, great blonde hair, blue eyes, an amazing suntan. He had like a snug-fitting jumper on with a sleeve pulled up with a bit of jewellery on, tomfoolery. And he had like a Mac draped over his shoulders like a gangster. And I remember that clearly. I went out and asked for his autograph, in fact, that's where it is now. But so again, it's that thing, you would see the players out and about, you would see, and sometimes they would get a volley of abuse if they hadn't perhaps delivered the way we hoped they would have done.
Yeah. My dad I grew up with stories, my dad telling the stories about seeing Brian Clough on the beach and having a normal conversation with him.
Scary sight, mustn't it? Can you imagine? Cool.
Yeah, exactly.
These budgie smugglers.
Well, I mean, you've talked about a few. You talked about some of those cup glories, and you followed, West Ham all that time. So, in all your time supporting them, what would you term as kind of the golden period when you followed them?
I mean, I love the Paolo Di Canio era because he was a quintessentially West Ham player. I know he had other issues going on, and he could be a prima donna, and politically he was bonkers. That kind of Italian fascist salute nonsense. And we've always had a player like that. We all latch on to different players. I love Julian Dix, and I've interviewed him a couple of times, and he's still linked to the club, associated with the club, and he's just a character. And it's not the hard man. Di Canio wasn't particularly a hard man, but it's just that sense of which some people, Di Canio could never pretend he was a boyhood fan. There was none of that stuff, but he kind of worked and he worked brilliantly, and I love that period. And, I've got on my YouTube saved endless file, various compendiums of some of his best goals. And he was a magician, that guy, I think, for us, just an amazing player. And I had hopes of that for now that his troubles are mainly, it seems, touchwood resolved, I've got not similar hopes, but I've got a different kind of hope for Paqueta this season, for example, because it's those players that make the hours it spends, the money it costs you, the hours you spend, the time you miss out on doing other things. That's what makes those kind of players, even if, and I hate to say this, even if we lose, you can go along and still see amazing moments, amazing things to talk about to keep you going through the week. If you've got a player you can identify with and latch onto, who seems to somehow characterise or sum up the club. I certainly think, for me, probably Di Canio in the recent era. I mean, and the other guys I met him once, I've been in his company once, and interviewed him a couple of Mark Noble. I mean, the fact he ran out for 500 times. Yeah. Again, it's like it will happen again, I'm sure. And football goes in cycles, kind of pendulum swings. But he was offered, when he was a schoolboy, I think he was offered a chance to go to Arsenal. We loaned him out for a season, the only time he played away for the club. But him and his dad, they were just West Ham fans. Yeah. So he's local, West Ham fan. And as I say, he ended up being the captain, played 500 times for the club. So that's an amazing, and I mean, if you cut him, he'd bleed claret and blue. Yeah. And those you must have those at Sunderland, I know, but those players are, it's almost like being an endorsement of being a fan. You said that's, I would never force football on people. I would never say stuff, you don't know what you're missing. I mean, I've had, I love the movies, I like reading, I've telly and all that kind of stuff. But actually, something you get from football, nothing else gives you, because it's kind of unscripted drama. And it's, it can be a Greek tragedy, it can be a comedy, it can be carry-on football, all in 90 minutes. It can be so many things. And also, of course, it's something where, I watch films on the telly, but I'll do everybody does. I'll put it on pause and go get a cup of tea or nick a beer from the fridge or something. In the cinema, you can't do that. I'll make sure I've kind of, had a wee or whatever before the film starts, and I'll sit there for it, and it's massive, and you get the shared emotion. If it's a comedy and it's any good, people are laughing. Same with football. And in football, you get it with, maybe not always at the London Stadium, but we've got a capacity of 60,000. And when a woof goes up and it's 15, 20, 30, 40,000 people, there's nothing like that. It's gladiatorial, and it's also benign, if that makes sense.
You don't have to tell us that. We got promoted with 2 last-minute goals. And...
Yeah. It's like, I think that's one of the, not one of the problems. There was talk, wasn't there, of a Jamie Vardy movie after 2016. Of course there was. And there's still talk of one, but a Agatha Christie one now. But I think when you went along and pitched it to Hollywood, they said, no, this can't be true. This can't be true. The boy from nowhere who's doing his tongue on in there, and he's, who's suddenly made this the biggest prize in football, or the most prestigious one. You would never think that. It's just too far-fetched. Yeah. And I think you get a little bit of that, and that's why the Yanks are bought into, I mean, our Wrexham are, okay, it's overhyped and it's irritating at times. I was pleased that Southampton beat them. A coffee Deadpool. But it's almost beyond belief to the Yanks what's happened there. Yeah. First, they don't get up the jeopardy, that kind of, because they don't like a lot of risk. They like be in cotton wool, other the Yanks, I think, in their lives like that. And then the fact that it's come good, we know what an achievement that's been for Wrexham. We know how it's happened. They've had great managers. They spent money. They've been fairly ruthless, like Paul Mullins has gone this season, which is what you've got to be in football. But it's delivered on a level that, had you pitched that as a movie, Hollywood would have said, no, it's too far-fetched. That ain't going to happen, the first season they don't make it up, and then it's back to back to back to back to back to back to back. That is beyond Hollywood. And that's only football would give us that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mentioned the types of players West Ham have had, and taking back to Julian Dix, nobody took a penalty like Julian Dix. And by the way, it was never going to work at Liverpool because he wasn't a Liverpool player. But just in terms of West Ham, and I'm going back to Sam Allardyce because we had a decent relationship with him until he left for England. But he had a pop at the West Ham way. Now, is that actually a thing, or is it just something people throw at West Ham fans?
I'm going to choose my words carefully here. I honestly think the West Ham way is a load of old bollards. I think, when Sam got some results, I was there. I can't remember who we were playing now. Might have been Wolves. We've got them coming up in the League Cup, the October Cup now. But at full time, Sam goes on the pitch and he's just towards what used to be the shed end to the chicken run. He's going like, oh yeah, you're not booing me now, are you? Of course, the West Ham way went out the window. And there is no, I mean, you cut your cloth if you're a manager or a coach according to the players you've got, and it's about the opposition. So, if we went out and played, I mean, the vision that some fans have that we're like kind of ballet dancers in football boots is rubbish. We can play a hard physical game. We have in the past, or other times you can, if the other team will allow it, you can look more skillful. You can play a big passing game. But Sam Allardyce could do that. I mean, in some ways, I've got no animosity to Gareth Southgate. And he did us a good turn. He made the team feel less cliquey. He opened up to the press, and we did well. We got to the Euro final, didn't we? Semi-final of the World Cup and stuff. But I would, in a parallel universe, I would love to know what Sam Allardyce would have done with England if those armpits at the Daily Telegraph hadn't entrapped him. And he did. He offered his resignation. The boring, bloated blokes in blazers shouldn't have taken it. He can't, if you read what actually happened to him, and I'm not, there's no problem making money out of it. He was doing a favour of a friend. He kind of made a few grunting noises that he should have maybe rethought, but it wasn't. If there's nothing criminal in that, it was just a mistake. And yet suddenly, but I suppose he can always boast. He's the only England manager with a 100% victory record, which is what it's about.
Yeah, we all, Sunderland fans all thought it was a waste of time because he left us in the lurch.
That's again. If England, and once, I've interviewed. In fact, he's a big Burnley fan. I've interviewed Alistair Campbell a few times, a former Labour spin doctor.
Yeah,
and before he got the England job, Sam Allardyce kind of approached him out of the blue and said, "Look, can you help me reposition myself and pitch myself? And what would you advise me to do to be considered for the England job?" So he always really wanted that, and it's almost like, again, back to that. The drama of football. It's almost like a Greek tragedy what happened to him, just this kind of, and he's, and again, I've never interviewed him. I've spoken to him because he does a lot of stuff on TalkSPORT. And when I used to do the breakfast show on Talk, I'd see him in the mornings and try and, just have a little chat with him. And I mentioned that's the Campbell thing. And he's not bitter about it. He made a mistake. He did the decent thing, which a lot of people don't, and offered to fall on his sword, and they shouldn't have let him. But to cope with that, to have, been through what he's been through in football and suddenly think, I've got this job, which he so wanted. It's not about money, England. It's not about, it's not even about the prestige. It's about thinking, I can make my career historic. There's a lot of talk rubbish about legacy in football. We only talk about the legacy when somebody's at our club, and then the legacy goes out the window. But actually, I think it's one of the great misses of my life in football. It's not seeing Sam Allardyce in position for a World Cup or two. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah. We'll never know, will we? But just going back to the modern day or the current day West Ham, if you like, because I'm just looking at, and you might tell me I'm absolutely wrong with this, because being outside of the Premier League, you don't really follow it as much as when you're in it. But let's look at the last 4 or 5 years, and you look at it on paper. In Europe, 3 years, you've had 3 top 10 finishes in the last 5 years. And on paper, I look at that and I kind of read it out and go, actually, well, things seem to be good at West Ham. But actually, over the last 4 or 5 years, every so often you see grumblings, and it hasn't seemed like the most happiest of places over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, would that be fair considering how well you've done on paper?
I think there's a reservations about the owner or owners now. I mean, David Gold died sadly a couple of years back now. We've got David Sullivan, who's, we all make our money some way. He made his money out of top shelf magazines and stuff. So which can maybe feel like a West Ham thing. And he was a boyhood fan of the club. But I also think we always want more. 2 things, really. One is we had to leave Upton Park. I never called it the Billing Ground. Me and my mates always called it Upton Park. We had to leave there, but it felt dangerous. And I'm not casting aspersions here, but it felt like maybe there was a selling of the family silver, and we didn't own it. We don't own anything now like that. We rent, and we've got an amazing deal. It's an amazing deal for businessmen. It's it's almost a disgrace, the amount of money we pay for the London Stadium. I mean, we're taking a mickey for it. But barely pay to get the windows cleaned. But there's a sense in which are we selling the family silver? And football fans always want more, don't they? So if we get a top 10 finish, then we'll go, that's what I would be Champions League next season, because you want to build on it. I've never had that aspiration. I mean, the reason I'm a bit non-committal about European football is because West Ham, I think we won the European Cup Winners' Cup once back in something, it might have been 64, 65, around that time. And then we were in the final one, and then we won that Intertoto rubbish. But we're not a European side, so it never really interested me particularly. I love English football, but and but when we won the conference, of course, then you're thinking, well, what is it then? Europa, we'll do this. And of course, when it doesn't happen, and we've had, I like David Moyes. I'd like him to have stayed. I think you've treated appallingly, certainly the first time when we got rid of him for that clown Pellegrini, who was happily, getting his pension over there in China. And for some, as Sam Allardyce once said, if his name had been Aladicio, he would have been asked to manage some of the clubs that, he could have easily managed. But I just think there was a sense with Moyes that he knew our strengths and weaknesses. He could play them and exploit other teams with them, and he got us that trophy, which made a huge, put a spring in everybody's step. But he was playing a different kind of football, and I think people think, yeah, but we want a top half finish and maybe a European trophy, a small, a little minor trophy, and we want beautiful football. Well, I'd like a platinum Rolls Royce with a diamond gift with, I don't know, Sydney Sweeney sitting beside me, but that's not either.
well, that's it. I found it, well, because look, Sunderland fans, you can't really have a proper conversation with Sunderland fans about David Moyes because of his time with us. But that era was so strange because you just thought, and all the pundits were going, he's doing a decent job, he's doing a good job. But West Ham fans just never seemed happy throughout that whole time.
Yeah, I mean, I said, I was keen. I never wanted him to go. I was always keen on him, and I think what's happened since has kind of underlined that. I mean, hopefully now Potter's had time to, get to have a bigger sale. Though we've not had a fantastic transfer window. I mean, I hope we get that Fernandes guy from Southampton because we need him certainly. I think, and we got that keeper from Leicester, Hermanson, isn't it? I think was turned up for that. We haven't done an awful lot of business, but I just kind of think he's a proper manager. And I think we're going to see that. I mean, this could be famous last words, and Everton could get relegated. I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. But the stadium, and there's a kind of crackle about them. And I think he brought that with him. I think you just sometimes cometh the hour, cometh the man, they say. And I think for West Ham, David Moyes, even the first time around was pretty darn good. Second time around, of course, domestically we weren't great at times, but that didn't matter. I mean, I think a bit like, we had a conversation earlier in the week on TalkSPORT, and I think there's a sense in some football fans of us knowing our place, and at times even I think I'd sort of a 15th, 16th now. I don't want another Christmas when I'm worried about relegation for West Ham, and we'd have been in real trouble if it hadn't been last season for Southampton and for Leicester and for Ipswich, because they took the pressure off of everybody. And I really genuinely think it'd be a disaster for the pyramid, but for the Championship and for the Premier League, if the three that go up, and I know you don't want that to happen either, go back down again, because it shows you there is something fundamentally flawed then about the financial model of football, about this whole profit and sustainability thing, which I think is another way of ghettoising us smaller clubs. So West Ham is a smaller. We know what the big, and in the end, if we're not careful, if that would happen a couple more times, then I could see the hideous beast of the Super League rearing its ugly head again.
Yeah, just quickly on Graham Potter, because I mean, again, tell us if I'm wrong, but from the outside, I get a similar feeling that West Ham fans are a bit unsure about him.
I mean, I must say, this is going to sound harsh, because we almost say by rote, we'll be an England manager one day. I don't think he necessarily will be, but they said about Eddie Howe, don't they? He's only just won his first decent trophy, but park that. I think the problem for me is, and I want a West Ham manager with a bit of charisma, a bit of flair, a bit of a showman, somebody who's going to say something unexpected. And I just think Winston Churchill once said of a politician, an empty taxi pulled up and this bloke got out. And I feel a bit like that with Graham Potter, that he's had a bit of a kind of charisma bypass. Now, I've never met the man. I don't wish him any ill, but I just think he doesn't come with a kind of aura of excitement, does he necessarily? He's not really, he's more Gareth Southgate than Sam Allardyce.
But is that not modern day football? Because you don't, for me, I mean, I'm going to sound like a dinosaur, but there's not that many characters about.
No, and there never have been really. But actually, when you think, I mean, Mourinho's a one-off. Klopp was a character. Most of us ended up hating him. I suddenly realised after a couple of years at Liverpool, he was like a chimp. And among his smiles, they're not being funny, they're being threatening. He was just an irritatingly ferocious, but I'd have loved, if I was a Liverpool fan, I'd have made him a saint. So, and that's the kind of thing I suppose I'm looking for in that front. Somebody who's, I think I would have loved Mourinho at West Ham. We were never going to get in. The money wasn't there. It would have ended badly. They'd left that usual toxic, stream behind him. But I think he was far more suited for that extra bite of the cherry at West Ham than he was at Spurs. That was not going to work at Spurs. Just they're a big corporate, monolithic, no disrespect to, or not much disrespect to them side, and they can't really necessarily accommodate a character. I think West Ham can. The club, we need someone to fill that role, and I don't know if Potter is filling it. Again, I hope and pray I'm wrong. If he wins us something, great. I just know he's never going to make a living on the after dinner speaking circuit. He's never going to do up. He wouldn't go on Stars in Their Eyes like Terry Venables did. No. Well, I think he did Tony Newley on Stars in Their Eyes. Potter's not going to do that, is he? Yeah,
that's it. But I mean, just in terms of the summer, do you think he's been backed? Because you mentioned some of the business they've done, but has he been able to build what he wants to build, or is he struggling a bit?
I think we're struggling a bit, and I think it's going to be, I'm hoping we don't do the usual kind of supermarket sweep bargain dash in the last 10 days, but I've got a feeling we might do. But I think, at our best, I think last season, we looked like a team, if that makes sense. The teams should be like the whole is greater than the sum total of the parts. You can have amazing players and it won't work as a team. That with PSG, when they had every great player under the sun, they weren't as good as they were a couple of seasons ago without those guys. So in that sense, I think. So I think we've got. I suppose the word I'm looking for is unit. We've got a unit now, I think, and I'm hoping that he can. And they're bonding around him. Also, I mean, football has changed. They still get ludicrous amounts of money, and they still can be Flash Harrys in there. But a lot of them have had the kind of personality academy out of them. I mean, the warning sign that was Michael Owen, great player, the most boring mother flipper you'll ever see on time. Again, his private life, he may be Mr. Comedy and funnier, but they just have all this kind of coshed out of them, I think. And that's what I think, that's one of the downsides of modern football. And you don't get that at the lower league clubs. And you don't get that in, if you're a Crewe Alexandra fan, God help you, but if you're a Crewe Alexandra fan or a Accrington Stanley fan, you'll know who the characters are on the pitch. You'll know the ones who really can practice the dark arts. You'll know the ones at the other team who is going to leave something on somebody in the first 10 minutes and intimidate the rest of them. That's kind of gone away a bit from a more sanitised football.
Yeah. That's why it'll be interesting to see how Luke O'Nien gets on in the Premier League this season.
Yeah. But that's that would never have really, I'm trying to think of who, Neymar. He had a tissue paper. Because he didn't play, he didn't come from the streets of Rio, did he? He didn't come from the streets of Brazil. He came from that academy thing where the players are, protected. I used to work with a great guy called A.D. Williams, who played for Reading for a long time, great defender. And he was Welsh international because he's like, I think his grandmother's husband's cousin's barber walked the dogs of somebody from Wales. So he's allowed to play for Wales, one of those things. But he was just, he still had he had been retired for 50 years. He still had scars on his shins from where he'd been got at. And that kind of, now I'm not saying the game is just that, but the game's got to have that. And I think that's what West Ham and, at times your mob were brought to the table, I think. That kind of, oh yeah, I don't care what you cost, mate. You're on our territory. Now come and have a go.
Yeah, people still, even now, when people shake Kevin Ball's hand, they know. Yeah, that's it. But just looking at the start of the season, just quickly, because I don't know how much credit Graham Potter's got in the bank, because I was looking at, if you don't get off to a good start, because I was looking at the first 5, Sunderland away, Chelsea at home, Forest away, then Spurs and Palace at home.
Yeah.
It's a tough start.
Yeah, we've got Everton after that and Arsenal. And we've also got, I think, our last game of the season, and this could be, the way things go, it could be crucial for both of us. We've got Leeds at home, last game of the season. Now, that could be a decider for West Ham and for Leeds, possibly even for Sunderland and who knows else, So, but there are no easy games in the Premier League either, which, again, is the joy of it, that you get something. I'm nervous. I know Sunderland are going to run out on Saturday, front of the home crowd, back where you belong. It's going to be an amazing cauldron of support and antagonism and hostility, which is what football should be about. And, it really wouldn't surprise me if we come away from that game with you getting 3 points. And I'm not just saying that as magical thinking. I genuinely feel that because, and what a marker for your mob that would be, although I'd hate you for it if you do that, because, that's the springboard then, that's the kind of off we go.
Yeah.
And, that's what everybody wants to do. I think we need to make sure we think our way around Chelsea, which is going to be a big ask. But again, the London Stadium can be quite an intimidating place, and we've been a bit of a bogey team at times for Chelsea, as Andy Jacobs always tells me on TalkSPORT.
Is there a bit of pressure on them getting a result against Sunderland, considering those games you've got to come?
We'll be on him straight away. If we don't beat Sunderland, we've been out of the game for 8 seasons and we barely speak English. You know what I mean? They'll be all that. Oh, can't even beat Sunderland. And we'll get. And the other thing is, what football is? We will get so much stick from the Chelsea fans from the off if we get beaten by your mob, because they will love it. They would like, you can't even beat Sunderland. And they got their Club World Cup. It's all that nonsense from Chelsea. I mean, they're a great side, Chelsea, but great team, great London team, because they always felt a bit maverick to me. Chelsea, I know they're not now post Mourinho, but they until he turned up, and Roman Abramovich started spending billions. They were a cup side as well. I would never early. When the Premier League started, no one would have thought Chelsea were going to be serious contenders in 10 years' time. But it's the magic of football.
Yeah, well, I say you touched on it earlier about the problems with the 3 promoted sides getting relegated.
Yeah.
But Burnley, Leeds and Sunderland have spent something around 300 million to try and stay up this summer. But how much of a problem is it if it happens again? I mean, do the Premier League really need to look at things if it happens again?
Well, I don't see we talked about this a lot on the show. I don't see how you can ring fence. I mean, I don't like the parachute payment. You're probably not crazy about it for all kinds of reasons, but I think it's a reward for failure. Yeah. I know why they happen, but it's a reward for failure. And it gives the teams that are relegated an unfair advantage. No 2 ways about it. We know, I think Ipswich and Leicester are the 2 favourites to go back up this season from the bookies. Now, I know that the bookies don't know everything, but then, you never see a poor bookie. But I just don't see how you can sanction against it. You can't join with a parachute, with a trampoline 3 points or something, because even that might not be enough. And some teams, there's this whole thing, they came up a season too early, or in Southampton's case last season, 2 seasons too early. They didn't seem to have the will to want to stay there. I mean, they were absolutely, it was a disgrace what happened with them last season. Again, it's not a disrespect to the fans or players, it's a fact. The fact that they nearly got the title nobody wants, which is to get less points than Derby, it just should not be happening, should it? But of course, I'd have liked Ipswich to have stayed up, because they just felt like, again, because I know Jason Cundy played for them, Alan Brazil played for them. They've got a history and stuff. But if it 3 in a row, I just don't know what the answer is to that. I mean, I just think there's got to be some kind of. And what I don't want is, we don't want a 2-tier Premier League, and we do not want the Super League. I mean, that would completely distort the game, I think.
Yeah, and just in general, rather than not just the relegation, but considering the end of last season, we need some drama as well, because that's possibly the worst last day of the season we've ever had.
Yeah, I mean, it was. But again, I just don't. I can't think my way around it. Believe me, we've had loads of different solutions, and Simon Jordan's always on about it, and it just is. Again, it's part of the joy. If it doesn't, if all 3 of you or 2 of you stay up this season, that was just a blip. But if it happens the 3rd time, it can't be a blip, can it? There's something going wrong there, and you just kind of think, it's not about spending more money. If Leeds get off to a bad start, there's no question that Farker's going to be I'm not being rude there, but he's going to be in a vulnerable position.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a kind of management side to it. Maybe there's some kind of, I don't know, you can only have one boss, but maybe they need a kind of mentoring advice, or somebody goes in and talks about how you make your side Premier League ready when you know you're going up in May. I don't know. Maybe there's something about and who do you hang on to, and what kind of things, or you're giving some kind of first pick of like the draft in the NFL or something of players, just or some kind of, I don't know, new boys discount or something.
I'd say give us a 10-point head start or something like that. That'll do. But last word on the game of the weekend. Have you got a good feeling either way? I mean, is there a bit of concern with West Ham fans?
I've genuinely I'm nervous, because you've got all the energy, you've got the promotion bounce, you've got the history. The players are desperate to make their mark. The fans are going to be, I know what Sunderland fans are like, going to be mentally behind them. I would take a draw now. Genuinely take a draw now. I'd like it to be 3-2 to West Ham, but I don't think we have any goals in it. So hopefully West Ham will prove me wrong.
Well, that's it. I think it's a case of both sides just trying to avoid defeat, isn't it, on the first opening day of the season?
I think Sunderland are going to do that. I think, I've got a feeling you're going to come at us, and I think we're going to be maybe intimidated by that sense of, let's be honest, you're an unknown quantity. And that's always intimidation, I think, for football sides. And it's day 1 of the season, and, maybe the Black Cats will get the cream.
Well, that's it. I'm a Sunderland fan, so I'm by nature glass half empty. But anyway, other than the result, I hope you enjoy your weekend. And it just leaves me to say thank you very much for your time, Paul. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
It's always a joy, matey. Come back on the show soon. Take it easy.
Good stuff. Maybe we can talk to you for the reverse fixture.
Maybe not.
Good stuff. Thanks again, Paul. Cheers. And thanks again for everyone for listening. We're counting down to that opening day fixture with West Ham United. So look out on the Roker Report website for all you need to know.
Lions.
Well, that's it. Let's hope we get 3 points, of course. And of course, we have our daily How the podcast to fill your ears. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.